Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're getting into something really fascinating, often kind of hidden in the background, TIG welding consumables. We've got a whole stack of info you sent over, and our mission today as well to sift through it, pull out the key stuff, the surprising bits, and give you that shortcut to really knowing what gets used up in TIG. TIG welding, gas tungsten arc welding, it's all about precision, that beautiful look, the quality. But what about the ingredients, the things that actually get consumed? What are we looking at today?
Yeah, it's amazing how these seemingly small parts have such a huge impact on the final weld, isn't it? We'll be exploring the specific things that get used up, consumed during TIG welding, stuff like the electrodes, the gases, creating that protective bubble, and even some pretty clever additions for specific jobs. It's really about understanding not just what gets used, but why it's chosen, and how those choices really shape the quality, the characteristics of the weld itself.
Okay, let's unpack that. When we say consumables for TIG, what does that actually cover? It sounds a bit counterintuitive for TIG sometimes.
Right. So in TIG welding, the main consumables are typically the filler wire you add and the shielding gas. But what's interesting, and you kind of touched on it, is the tungsten electrode. It's often called non-consumable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it absolutely does get used up, slowly, mind you.
Yeah.
It erodes in the arc. You grind it to keep a point. Maybe your technique isn't quite right. It wears down. And then you've got things like the ceramic shields, the nozzles, and some specialized items like fusible inserts. They all kind of fall under this consumables umbrella in practice.
Okay, that electrode part is interesting. The non-consumable, let's start there. It's not just melting in, but it does wear away.
Yeah.
Tell us more about these tungstens.
Precisely. It's a bit of a paradox, yeah. The tungsten electrode is, well, it's central to TIG. It creates the arc. And they're usually made using something called powder forging technology. They aren't just pure tungsten, though you can get that. Usually they have other oxides added in, specific ones, things like lanthanum, cerium, thorium, sometimes zirconium.
Ah, okay. Why add those?
Good question. Those oxides are added to basically enhance how well it conducts electricity and how easily it emits electrons. And that, in turn, really influences the arc characteristics, makes it start easier, keeps it more stable.
So they're engineered, not just lumps of metal.
Definitely engineered. You can get them off the shelf, of course, in standard diameters, usually from about 1.6 millimeters up to maybe 10 millimeters. Different sizes for different jobs, different currents.
So yeah, while they're not melting into the weld like a filler wire, they're definitely not lasting forever. You have to replace them.
Exactly. They wear out, tip gets contaminated, it erodes away. Is part of the process.
Okay, moving on then. Let's talk about the material that actually forms the weld bead, the filler wire. What's special about TIG filler wires? You hear they need to be really high quality.
They absolutely do. The quality is critical. This is because, well, unlike some other processes, say stick welding or Flux-Cored.
Where you have flux cleaning things up.
Exactly. In TIG, there are normally no extra cleaning elements added into the weld through the wire or the gas. It's a very clean process in that sense. So the refinement, the purity of the wire has to happen way back, right at the casting stage when the wire is first made. Then it's just meticulously rolled and drawn down to the exact size you need. Super precise.
Wow. Okay, so any dirt or oil on that wire is a big problem.
Huge problem. Porosity.
Yeah.
Cracking. Yeah. That's why they're typically copper-coated. That coating isn't just for looks. It helps stop corrosion while it's stored. They usually come in standard 1-meter lengths. Easy to handle.
And how do you know what's what if you have a bunch of different rods?
They're stamped. Each wire has a code stamped on it. It might be the manufacturer's code or a national standard number like an AWS classification. That code tells you the exact chemical composition, so you can match it properly to your base metal, which is vital.
Makes sense. And storage sounds key then.
Absolutely paramount. They come in cardboard or plastic tubes usually. You have to keep them clean, free from oil, grease, dust, everything. For really critical work, some procedures even require degreasing them right before you use them. You just can't afford any contamination.
Right. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, especially for things like pipes. Tell us about those specialized filler materials, the inserts you mentioned earlier.
Ah, yes, the fusible inserts. This addresses a specific challenge. How do you guarantee a perfect root pass on the inside of a pipe? Especially if you can only weld from one side.
Yeah, that sounds tricky.
It can be. So this is where fusible inserts come in, sometimes called EB inserts. That stands for Electric Boat Company in the US, where they were developed. Or you might hear consumable socket ring, CSR.
So what are they exactly?
They're basically preformed rings or shapes of filler metal. And crucially, they're designed to match the composition of the pipe material you're welding. You pre-place them right in the root of the joint before you start welding, maybe tack them in place. Then, as you make that first pass, the root pass, the insert melts and fuses completely into the joint. It becomes part of the weld. It ensures you get full penetration and a really nice, consistent internal profile without needing to, say, grind out the root from the inside and weld it again.
That sounds incredibly useful. Saves a lot of hassle.
It does. Big time saver and quality booster for pipeline work, pressure vessels, things like that. And they're available for lots of materials: carbon steel, chromoly steels, stainless, nickel alloys, copper nickel. Different shapes for different joint preps, too.
Yeah.
Really clever bit of consumable tech.
Okay, so we've got the arc source, the filler metal, now the protection. Let's talk shielding gases. These are fundamental for TIG, right? The invisible shield.
Absolutely fundamental. You can't TIG weld without shielding gas. The atmosphere, oxygen, nitrogen, moisture, it would just wreck the molten weld pool instantly. So for TIG, the gases are generally inert, meaning they don't react chemically with the weld.
Like argon.
Helium, exactly. Pure argon or pure helium are the most common.
Yeah.
And they have to be really pure, like 99.99% pure. Yeah, that high purity is critical. It really highlights why you need to be so careful about purging your gas lines before starting, making sure your hoses aren't cracked or leaking. Any contamination, any air getting sucked in, it can seriously mess up your weld quality. Porosity, brittleness, all sorts of problems.
Okay, so argon versus helium, they're both inert, but they act differently. What are the key differences a welder needs to keep in mind?
The big question. This is a crucial choice. So argon. It's more common in the air, generally cheaper. It's also denser, heavier than air, which means it provides good coverage, especially when you're welding flat or downhand. You usually need a lower flow rate compared to helium.
Okay.
Argon also has low thermal conductivity. That tends to give you a wider weld bead on top, maybe a bit less penetration for the same current. And importantly, it has a low ionization potential. That makes it easier to start the arc. And it gives really good arc stability, especially with AC current for aluminum. Plus, it gives that cleaning action on aluminum.
So argon is kind of the easier, more stable choice.
In many ways, yeah. But the downside is, for the same amps, you get less heat compared to helium. So less penetration, potentially a wider heat-affected zone, the HAZ. If you need more heat, you have to crank up the current with argon, which might increase undercut risk on some joints.
Gotcha. And helium?
Helium's different. Less common globally, but more available naturally in places like the US, so it's used more there. It's much lighter than air, so it tends to float away.
Yeah.
You need a higher flow rate, maybe 2 or 3 times what you use for argon, to get the same shielding cover, especially welding downhand. That makes it more expensive to use gas-wise.
Right, more gas needed.
Yeah, and it has a higher ionization potential. Arc starting can be a bit trickier. Arc stability, especially on AC, might not be quite as good. It can be less forgiving for a beginner.
But the heat?
That's the key. For the same arc current, helium produces significantly more heat than argon, much hotter arc. So you get increased penetration. It's fantastic for welding thick stuff or metals that conduct heat away quickly, like copper or heavy aluminum.
So it packs more punch.
Exactly. More punch, deeper penetration.
Yeah.
And because you can often use a lower current to get the same power level as argon, it tends to produce less undercut. It's the choice for high-performance applications, you could say.
So it really sounds like a trade-off. Cost, ease of use with argon versus the pure power and penetration of helium, but with higher cost and maybe needing more skill.
That sums it up pretty well. It's always a balance depending on the job.
And what about mixing them? Do people do that?
Oh, absolutely. Argon-helium mixtures are very common. You use them to try and get the best of both worlds. By tweaking the percentage, say 75% argon, 25% helium, or 50-50, you can fine-tune the heat input, the arc stability, the bead profile, and still get good gas coverage. It gives you more control.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there any other gases that sometimes get added? Maybe for special cases, even non-inert ones?
Yes, there are, but you have to be really careful here. Hydrogen, for instance.
Hydrogen, isn't that flammable?
Highly flammable, yes. And explosive. It's definitely not an inert gas, and you'd never use pure hydrogen as your main shield gas for TIG.
Mm-hmm.
But adding a small amount, typically up to maybe 5%, into argon can have some benefits.
Like what?
It significantly boosts the heat input, makes the arc hotter, so you can weld faster, get deeper penetration. It also helps the molten metal flow better. We call it wetting action, which can give you a nicer bead shape and a cleaner surface.
But there must be a catch.
Big catch. Its use is strictly limited, only for certain materials. Austenitic stainless steels like your 300 series and some nickel alloys.
Why only those?
Because hydrogen can cause serious problems like cracking or embrittlement. in other materials, especially carbon steels and ferritic stainless steels. So very specific applications only.
Okay. What about nitrogen? Also not inert.
Correct. Nitrogen isn't inert either, but it's common and cheap. Again, sometimes added in small amounts, up to 5% to argon. Its main use is actually often in back purging, protecting the backside of the weld, specifically for duplex stainless steels. It helps maintain the right microstructure balance in duplex, sometimes also used in shielding or purging gas mixes for austenitic stainless steels and copper alloys too.
Any big don'ts with nitrogen?
Absolutely. Do not use nitrogen for welding mild steels. It can cause something called age embrittlement, makes the steel brittle over time, and it's strictly forbidden for welding nickel and most nickel alloys. Nitrogen just doesn't dissolve well in molten nickel, so it causes massive porosity as the weld freezes. Really important restriction to remember.
Got it. Very specific uses and very specific warnings.
You have to know your materials and your gases.
Okay, one last consumable mentioned in our sources, the ceramic shields or nozzles. Are these really consumed in the same way?
Well, not chemically consumed like filler wire or gas, no. But in the practical sense, yeah, absolutely. They're definitely a consumable item you go through.
How so?
They're ceramic. They're brittle. You drop your torch, you bump it against something, crack. They break easily.
Ah, right. Fragile.
Exactly. And their size and shape aren't just random. They're chosen based on the type of joint you're welding, how much access you have, and importantly, the diameter of the tungsten electrode you're using. You need the right nozzle to direct the shielding gas properly over the weld area.
And things like gas lenses fit into this.
Precisely. A gas lens is a type of nozzle setup, often with fine mesh screens inside. It smooths out the gas flow, makes it less turbulent laminar flow, we call it. This gives you better shielding coverage, often allowing you to stick the tungsten out further for better visibility or reach, and is great for sensitive metals like titanium or stainless. So choosing the right size and type of nozzle, maybe with or without a gas lens, directly affects your gas shielding. And since they break, yeah, they're effectively a consumable. You need spares.
Okay, that covers a lot of ground. So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for everyone listening? It seems like every little piece matters in TIG.
It really does.
Yeah.
From the specific oxides in your tungsten to the absolute purity needed in your filler wire and gas, even down to the shape of your ceramic nozzle. Every single element is chosen deliberately. And it all directly impacts the final weld quality, the strength, the appearance. It just shows how specialized TIG welding is, how much science is behind getting that perfect result.
Yeah, it's not just point and shoot. Understanding these consumables isn't just about knowing names, is it?
Not at all. It's about appreciating that that complex interaction between all these materials and the welding process itself, the chemistry, the physics. It's all happening right there in the arc. So for anyone doing TIG welding or even just curious about it, really thinking about the whole life cycle, how you store these things, how you select the right one for the job, how you use it carefully, that's key. It's how you get those top quality results consistently and avoid, really costly mistakes or weld failures down the line. The details matter hugely.
Absolutely. It's the hidden details that often make the biggest difference. The beauty is in the precision, seen and unseen. And that brings us to the end of another deep dive. Really fascinating stuff. Until next time, keep that curiosity sparking.